Cooper got open and caught it. Touchdown, Indiana.
Going up the middle is Omar Cooper, and he'll walk into the end zone.
Complete at the 47. Surratt with no one to beat. Hello and welcome to Crimson Kickoff. Episode 6 is coming to you live from the Sweet Decks here at Merchants Bank Field at Memorial Stadium. I'm Joe Cronin, as always, joined by Thomas Crow and Graham Nash, as well as our whole production crew. The Indiana Hoosiers are 5-0, fresh off of their bye week, and they are staring down the barrel of their toughest game yet. They're heading out west to take on the number 3 team in all the land, the Oregon Ducks. Thomas, this game is massive. It's the biggest game of the country, and for these two teams, it might be their biggest game of the season.
Yeah, both teams coming off a bye, but both teams with big wins prior to that bye. You have Fernando Mendoza and Dante Moore, the Heisman front runners in some circles. You have Dan Lanning. You have Coach Kurt Signetti. It is about to be an insane game in Autzen Stadium on Saturday.
The CBS broadcast, College Game Day, that's going to start at 6 a.m. local time out in Eugene. That's kind of wild. But before we talk about all the things Oregon, we got to talk about how Indiana got to 5-0. 2 weeks ago, they took down the Iowa Hawkeyes on the road, really the first marquee road win for Kurt Signetti, 20-15, and that was a gutty win for the Hoosiers, Graham.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't necessarily a pretty win, but it was a win nonetheless. I mean, it started out strong, right? You got that interception right there. Indiana would go down and score. But then other than that, offense was really hard to come by, or at least consistent offense. Indiana was able to put a couple more points on the board. What everyone in Bloomington and on this team will remember is that very last play of the game, the Elijah Surratt touchdown. That is what Coach Signetti said in all of his post-game interviews, was that is what he is going to remember leaving Iowa and leaving that stadium, leaving Kinnick. Not the struggles, that play, and that win from the team.
Yeah, I just remember the first 2 or 3 plays from scrimmage, or with the interception that Gronowski threw into the Cooper touchdown, Graham. We kind of looked at each other on the side, like, yeah. Oh my, this might not be close. But, you know, Iowa held in there. And then the post, or it was the locker room video with Kurt Signetti, where he just said, all we need to do is get it to 13, Thomas, and Elijah Surratt. He was the man.
Desperation to celebration, right? They throw the interception, think the game might be over. I was going to have a chance to win this thing. Indiana comes out. Finally, Fernando Mendoza is able to get away from the blitz, knows the slant's coming immediately, hits Surratt. Surratt goes and scores the game-winning touchdown. It was one of the best moments Indiana football fans have seen maybe in some of their lifetimes.
This was a honestly big win. A lot on the line with that. I mean, it was the first, like I said, big road win for Kurt Signetti, and you see the yards. This was the toughest battle for Indiana's offense, and honestly, I think they were tested some of the most defensively. It wasn't a powerful, super explosive Iowa offense, but they ran their script well and they got to their marks, Graham.
Yeah, they did, and the O-line did a phenomenal job. There's a lot of situations where Indiana brought a lot of pressure, and that O-line stood pretty tough. They allowed Gronowski to get time, use his feet quick. He's a quick quarterback that we saw, and he got open. He got a lot of good chances for Iowa. It wasn't enough, obviously, but, you know, that defense of Indiana had opportunities and didn't always take advantage because of that good O-line from Iowa. But still, you know, considering the circumstances, no D'Angelo Pons, and still having to stop that offense on the road, I think they did a pretty good job, all things considered.
D'Angelo Pons was a late addition to the injury report in that Week 5 game. He will be is expected to be available against Oregon this upcoming Saturday. But Thomas, defensively, it seemed like they took care of business when they needed to, got that third down stop to force the missed field goal. But a big moment was Mark Gronowski going down in this game. I mean, could you pull up a hypothetical world where it's a different scenario if Gronowski's not hurt?
Yeah, what does it look like if he doesn't go down? He was 19-25 passing before he went down with that injury. Yeah, it's a question. I mean, obviously the Iowa offense seemed much slower, not as in tune as they were when he was the starting quarterback playing in that game. Yeah, Joe, I mean, obviously we're 2 weeks removed. It's a little late for hypotheticals, but yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely something to think about and something Coach Kurt Signetti probably talked to his team about.
I will say offensively for the Hoosiers, something that kind of stood out to me was on the ground. It was tough sledding. Yes, there was a negative 40-yard rush at the end of the game when Mendoza had to run into the back of the end zone. And I quote him here. He said, "Sorry, I cooked your spreads," after that. A little crazy thing to say for the quarterback. But Roman Hemby, Graham, I think kind of separated himself in the running back room, had a very solid outing.
Yeah, I would agree. 15 carries, 86 yards, and again, a not very pretty football game. Those kind of games are where you need someone to just kind of dig a couple yards out of the trenches and a couple big moments. And he was that guy. There were so many times where he just tried, he played bully ball. He just had to put his head down and push. And I was like, man, that guy's got to be tired. Because, I mean, he was just getting the ball time after time again, and he was finding ways to get positive yardage. It was impressive, and something that we talked about before the show started. We didn't see many other backs in that game, specifically Kobe Martin. We were wondering if that was going to happen, when it would happen. The second it's that really tight game, they stick to their main guy in Roman Hemby.
We'll definitely touch on more in the running back room throughout this show. Thomas, really last thing about this Iowa game, it just seemed like it was a moment, everything around it. It was a good team in Indiana finding a way to win when it mattered the most.
Yeah, right, guys. I mean, we can talk about the specifics of the game all we want, but when you break it down to just pure college football, this is an Indiana team that had not gone on the road yet, who is going onto the road to a good team who plays well at home in a stadium that gets loud. What do you want your team? What do you want your quarterback to do? Win the game. However you have to win that game, whether it's throw an interception late in the game and then throw a touchdown. However you need to do it, Indiana found a way. Kurt Signetti pumped it into the guys to get it done. And they did.
That was the most animated I've seen Kurt Signetti in what was his 16th, 17th game coaching so far for Indiana. But we have so much to talk about, an entire Oregon game to preview, a top 10 matchup in the country to preview. But before we do that, I did have the chance to catch up with the starting linebacker for the Indiana Hoosiers, Aiden Fisher. Don't go anywhere. All right, I'm here with linebacker Aiden Fisher. Aiden, coming off a bye week. How was the bye week?
It was good. A lot of time to rest and recover. A couple less practices, but we were able to, get our feet back under us and then prepare for Oregon a little bit and do some self-scout as well.
When you're fresh off a game like the Iowa one, real kind of gutty, very physical, how nice is the timing to have a week off after that?
Oh, yeah, it's great. Iowa's obviously known for being a big and physical team, and, they were exactly that. So having some time to kind of recover right after, be fresh going into this game, it's been huge for us.
So in a 3-week span, you're going road game, bye week, road game. What's kind of the challenges, maybe mentally and just prepping-wise, to go through that 3-week stretch?
Yeah, I think having that break in between is going to help us a lot. And then for me personally, I love playing away games. You get a chance to kind of go into somebody else's place, kind of silence the crowd. So I know a lot of guys think the same as I do with that. So, the preparation kind of remains the same. Obviously, you have that travel time in between that you got to take advantage of to keep preparing. I think that's the only thing that would kind of be the difference between playing home games.
What is your favorite part of playing on the road?
Probably getting booed as soon as we go out. It sets the tone quick. We're not very liked there. And then obviously at the end of the game when, the seats are empty and, nobody's really booing us no more, that's always a good feeling.
Now moving on to Oregon, this is a very explosive, very talented team offensively. What stands out the most? Obviously their quarterback's getting a lot of national recognition right now.
Yeah, quarterback's a really good player. They have really good playmakers, really good tight ends, receivers, a lot of running backs that are very effective, and a really good O-line. So really have our hands full, and schematically they throw a lot at you. So it's going to be a great challenge that we're excited for.
How's this week of practice been going leading up, getting back from the bye and everything?
Yeah, it's been really good. Everybody's kind of keyed in on the little details that I think we missed on, prepping for Ohio State and Notre Dame last year. So taking those experiences and kind of putting it to use now and kind of taking the initiative to make sure those, problems don't pop up again.
I know you kind of live and die by the next game mentality. Mm-hmm. There's so much noise around this game. How do you personally go about just tuning everything out and focusing on this is just the next game that I'm wearing an Indiana uniform in?
Yeah, I think it starts with my preparation. I think we really have to be studying the film, big on, just listening to our coaches in the meetings, trying to stay ahead of Oregon. I think they're, a great offense you got to prepare for. And then obviously with all the national media, coverage and stuff like that, I have all notifications turned off. I have all season, so I don't really see a lot of that, and I try not to. But at the end of the day, they don't really affect anything that goes into our game plans or how we play. So just not letting that, creep into this facility at all.
Well, Aiden, best of luck this weekend. Safe travels out in Eugene.
When talking to Aiden Fisher, you can see he resonates a lot of the same messages from Cignetti. And Cignetti has never named anyone a captain of his football programs that he's been a head coach of. But you can kind of tell the leader, the captain-like trends and traits that Aiden Fisher has. Hoosiers, though, they're 5-0, Thomas. And they really do have one of the best quarterbacks, not just in the Big Ten, but in the country. Fernando Mendoza has really looked terrific. Really just a couple mistakes out in Iowa. But other than that, just almost picture perfect, you could say.
Yeah, he's jumped himself up into the, it depends where you're looking at, some top 5, top 3, even the front runner of the Heisman conversation. Against Iowa, like I just said before we went to the Fisher interview, it was the environment that I attribute some of it to. He still had 233 yards. He still had 2 touchdowns. He did have that interception. But guys, for me, it was against the blitz that I was a little worried about. For some reason, if you watch the video, he starts with his head left a lot on those blitz, and he's opening himself up to not getting all the way back to his progressions on time. I think that's something he definitely has to get away from against Oregon, because they come at you from everywhere.
Now, Thomas, I think something so underrated about the game-winning touchdown was obviously Elijah Surratt breaks the tackle, and that's the huge moment. He has green grass in front of him. But Mendoza had to pick up the blitz and put the ball in stride right on time before he got popped. And Graham, he leads the conference in touchdown passes with 16 total, and he leads the nation in passer rating for a quarterback that has at least 100 attempts. He's just looked so sharp in some of the biggest moments this season.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that you would be tempted to put under the game management category because he's so good at using the pieces that he has and playing in the offense. But he's a firecracker as well. Like, he's made some unbelievable plays, unbelievable throws. I think that Fernando Mendoza is such a good quarterback for the Kurt Cignetti offense and the Mike Shanahan style. It's just a great marriage, and he has thrived early on in the season. It's really been impressive. Of course, the one blemish in Iowa, I agree with you, Thomas. You're going to have those days, and being on the road against Iowa, that's tough. But, man, the start that he's had to the season is pretty unparalleled.
Graham, you said that great. But what better way to be an all-around quarterback? Be the game manager when you need to be the gunslinger when you need to be the improviser when you need to be. Yeah. I think Fernando does that as well as anyone in the country. He can get it done in so many different ways. He has one of the strongest arms, but he also has such good touch. He also is so good in the pocket, but he can use his legs outside of the pocket. He's playing unreal football, guys.
He's not afraid to kind of take the ball and run. Not the fastest guy on the field, but if he needs to get some 5 yards and move the sticks, get into a third and manageable, he's not afraid to lower the shoulder, which might give Cignetti a little bit of a heart attack. But there was a moment in that Iowa game, Graham, where Mendoza scrambled out, got a pretty big game, and ended up being like a 4th and 1 that he set up, and he got drilled off to the sideline, which led to kind of a scrum there on the Iowa guy who knocked him out of bounds. But that was a moment that when Pat Coogan talked, that he said to the team that we are winning this game.
Yeah, he kind of took over in that moment, Pat Coogan did, and we talked to a couple different players about it, but he just got the entire team together and riled them up, got them ready for that last bit of action. But, man, Fernando Mendoza kind of got smoked on that play. He got hit hard. And, there were some serious, oohs from the crowd because he took a hard hit, and he popped right back up. He got up pretty quickly. He's a tough guy. But yeah, the leadership that Pat Coogan is showing, Joe, like you mentioned, it's impressive considering, that was game 5 with this team.
Coogan's been in those big moments before. We talked about a lot in our Iowa preview show, how he, he's been in a national championship, played in a national championship with Notre Dame. But with Mendoza, Graham, he has a terrific supporting cast on the outside. We talked about him a little bit, but Mr. Waffle House, Elijah Surratt looks like a surefire all Big Ten caliber receiver, possibly even All-American, and had, his biggest game at the biggest moment.
Yeah, Elijah Surratt, what a game against Iowa. If you look at the stats in certain places, you'll see 6 catches, but he had 7.
He had
7. We did the math. We went back and looked, and he had triple-digit yards. It was such a good game. You got to lean on someone in those big moments. But, look at the other pieces. Omar Cooper Jr., a very explosive wide receiver. E.J. Williams Jr. has been open on a lot of different opportunities in the red zone. There's a lot of different places Fernando Mendoza can go with the football if he doesn't like his first option, which has proven to be Elijah Surratt. But man, there are not many times, at least as of late, where he's been going through those progressions and been like, I don't want to throw it to Elijah Surratt.
But Thomas, even after that first game against Old Dominion, Surratt was kind of quiet, and it was a quiet offensive game for Indiana. Ever since then, he has exploded into the receiver that I think a lot of the outside people thought, and the receiver that he kind of knows that he is.
Well, it's Surratt is one of the best receivers in the Big Ten, but I want to think about duos for a second. You look at going into the season, I think Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith were probably the duo that everyone thought was going to be the most explosive in the Big Ten. And to their credit, they have been. They had 200 plus yards and 3 touchdowns combined last week. But Elijah Surratt and Omar Cooper, they have 800 plus combined yards, and they have 12 total touchdowns. And you said it. That's not mentioning EJ Williams. That's not mentioning the tight ends or the running backs. Guys, Fernando Mendoza, I just said a couple seconds ago how good of a quarterback he is. But when you have these guys on the field with you, it makes it easier.
It is weapons galore kind of with this team, it feels like. The tight end room is pretty deep. I mean, Holden Stays and Riley Nowakowski have gotten their hands dirty both in the run game and then can pass catch as well. But that receiving duo right there, combined 12 touchdowns, that leads the entire nation for a receiving duo. In their yards, they're one of 3 Big Ten teams to have 2 guys in the top 10 in the conference in yardage. It's Rutgers and Ohio State, the 2 other teams right there. But that duo right there, they have looked the part and come up in a big way, Graham.
Yeah, they have. And, that's what you need, right? We've talked about it so far a lot. You need those guys in those big moments. And they're coming off a first season with Indiana at Indiana that was, had its really high moments, had some very low moments, but they went through the trenches through it all and seemed to have come out of that and come into the second season with a lot of energy and a lot of good experience to now really build with a new quarterback.
Now, with Indiana having their bye week last week, we also had the chance to prep things a little more. And Thomas, I know you've been wanting to do this. You get to dive in a little bit on some of the meticulous actions and looks of Indiana's season so far.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to get into the Crimson Kickoff film study room earlier this week, and we actually have been talking about Omar Cooper, Elijah Surratt, and Fernando Mendoza. Well, I talk about 3 plays that those guys got involved with throughout the season so far. So let's jump into that video. All right, welcome to the Crimson Kickoff new and improved film study room. Let's go ahead and get going on a couple Indiana plays so far in the first couple games so far this season. Let's start against Kennesaw State. First thing I'm seeing here, 5 guys at the line, 2 guys there. What Shanahan's trying to get this defensive line to look at is he's going to fake a handoff to Beebe. The way he's going to do that is have Holden Stays get going a little bit here and then come back here. Eventually what's going to happen is Omar Cooper is going to get this ball and come around. The way and the only way that this play works is if Elijah Surratt can set this edge to give Stays a little bit of time to get all the way out here to set another block. Let's run through it. Here is Stays. Stays goes, thinks he goes there, fake the handoff and come to Cooper. Great block by Surratt. Great block by Stays. Nowakowski way from the other side of the field gets all the way up. Look at the hole those guys created. Omar stays in bounds. He's getting tired, obviously, here, but he's able to get in the end zone. Let's go a little bit slower on it to see what actually happens. So, first thing, like I said, they're trying to get this motion to look like it's a run to the right side. Look how many guys get convoluted right there. So many players. Here comes Stays. Great block. Stays. Carter Smith's trying to get a block. Coogan's trying to get a block. He falls down. Doesn't matter. Omar Cooper's a great open field runner. Great block by Stays to push that defender that way. Nowakowski pushes that defender that way. And look at the hole that it creates there. And like I said, you can tell he's getting tired here. He ran a lot more than just 75 yards on this play. But this one becomes 35-9 Indiana, and the Hoosiers end up winning this one big. Great play there. Great play design from Shanahan. Now let's go to the Iowa game. We're talking about Fernando Mendoza's interception. Let's see how we got there. Late in the fourth quarter, there's still 3:03 to go, Indiana in plus territory. First thing I see, the 5 guys at the line, guy creeping there a little bit, and guy creeping there. One thing to think about, this tight end up here at the top, is he going to stay? What's going to happen there? Let's go ahead and run it. Immediately, you see all the guys coming for a blitz. Hemby tries to get the blocker there. Doesn't matter. Nando never saw the blitzer on the right side. Once he got his eyes turned, he was dead to rights. He had to get it out. Maybe would have wanted to take a sack there. Indiana's able to make it. Not a pick 6, however. So let's see once again how we got there. All the guys are creeping up. Nowakowski at the top of the screen. goes out, doesn't even touch that guy really, and unblocks. So Nando starts left, gets back to the middle, and just immediately overthrows Cooper. He was getting blitzed pretty rough. And then here you can see Hemby misses a tackle at the 45-yard line. And it's a good thing the linemen were able to use the sideline boundary to their advantage. It could have easily been a pick six if those guys didn't hustle to get out there. So let's get to the last important play in this Iowa game. Indiana ends up getting the ball back. 1:36. Look, they're late into this play clock already. You don't like that when you see all these guys at the line. First thing I think, okay, 1, 2, 3. Those are most likely going to be your only guys in coverage. They're sending a heavy blitz. You have a tight end. You have a running back. Those guys have to stay in there and help you. Fernando's got to get his eyes up immediately. His eyes went left last time they blitzed. Let's see what they do here. They immediately go left. He sees Surratt. Surratt runs an easy slant route, and you'll see it when we go slow. He had 4 yards of separation when that ball was caught. Any receiver in college football is going to break that tackle and score. So let's see. Tight end stays. Running back stays. Everyone goes. And look at the separation here when he catches it. 3 or 4 yards. Immediately, what a great play from Fernando Mendoza. Eyes up. Knows that it's going to be a man play there. He knows he has Surratt on a quick slant. Get that ball out. Even if he does get tackled, that becomes a 4th and 2. Either way, Indiana ends up scoring on that one. Great vision from Fernando Mendoza on that play. All right, guys, and myself, back to you.
Well, Thomas, it's good to have you back on set. Glad you got your tie on. Great knot, too.
Yes, it's good to be back, guys.
Some ball knowledge right there, just diving into the film. As we wrap up kind of our Indiana outlook, let's look at the defense. D'Angelo Pons is kind of the big storyline, him not playing against Iowa. He is back, and Graham, that is huge news. I mean, he is the best corner, one of the best defenders on that Indiana team.
Yeah, and Oregon has one of the best wide receiver rooms in the Big Ten as well. So very, very big to have D'Angelo Pons, because now that defense can also go back to some of its more comfortable and traditional schemes. We saw them get away from that a little bit against Iowa. We talked about it, but man, he's really good. He's really good.
Now, on the season, this defensive line, the front seven, Thomas, is wreaking havoc. They did so again against Iowa, 6 tackles for loss. But right now, they are second in the nation in tackles for loss per game, with just under 10. Isaiah Jones has looked terrific rising through the ranks this season. He has 8 on the year. I mean, they are getting into the backfield and making a home there, Thomas.
Yeah, Joe, I mean, I think sometimes sacks is looked at as such a superior category of statistics compared to tackles for loss, but a sack loses 5 to 7 yards. A tackle for loss loses 2 to 3. I mean, it's still knocking teams behind the chains, and Indiana is doing it as high of a clip as anyone in the nation. They are getting after these running backs. They're getting so quickly into the backfield, pushing guys off their spots. And that, I mean, that's demoralizing for an offense when it goes from 1st and 10 to 2nd and 12, 2nd and 13. Immediately you're off script and off schedule behind the chains.
Absolutely. And I think one of the biggest things, Graham, is Mikhail Kamara has had a relatively quiet year. Yes, there is so much attention on him from the season he had last year with the 10 sacks, nearly 20 tackles for loss. But the interior guys of the Mario Landinos, the Tyreek Tucker, they've stepped up in a big way, filling those shoes of CJ West from last season.
That's absolutely right. We've talked about how Mikhail Kamara has taken a lot of attention, as you rightfully should, and that opens the door for some of these other guys. I mean, Tyreek Tucker has been phenomenal. And so is Kellen Wyatt and Mario Landino. You can go on, but I think it still all starts still with Kamara and his ability to draw that attention. You need to put bodies on that guy. He's such a good pass rusher, and it has seriously opened the door for these other guys. It's going to be interesting to see if Kamara gets some more opportunities now that those other guys have kind of made their names against these other teams early in the season. If, Oregon has to shift some attention to Tyreek Tucker, to Kellen Wyatt, and now we see Mikhail Kamara get going.
That's what I wanted to hit on, Graham, when you were talking there, is when does the flip kind of switch? Kamara isn't getting as many sacks. I know he's impacting the game in other ways and bringing multiple blockers, but at what point do offensive coordinators and offensive line coaches look at it and say, hey, this guy's going to hurt us, but look at these other guys. These guys are doing a lot of work too. We need to make sure we're covering them as well.
Now, moving towards the secondary and some of the pass defense that isn't on the line right there, I think that Iowa game is where I kind of noticed some gaps, and I think Pons was a big reason for that. Him being out led to a heavier zone look, and Gronowski was able to kind of take advantage of some of those opportunities through the middle on those third and medium looks right there. And then the safety room, it was talked about after the Kennesaw State game that the safeties really needed to take a leap. And now that Lewis Moore has that out of his head, that he has the eligibility for the rest of the season, I imagine his mind has probably fully been on football, but he doesn't have to worry about some things off the field. Those two, Lewis Moore and Amari Fayetteville, both have 3 picks on the season, but Graham, there have been some gaps there on the safety and kind of that secondary back.
Yeah, it's been a little back and forth. There have been moments where the secondary and the safeties have looked great. Like you said, 3 interceptions for both of those guys, but there have been some serious gaps. I think that Illinois game, the big explosive play that Illinois had, just a total miscommunication against Kennesaw State in some of those pre-Big Ten games. Coach Signetti said that information was getting to the safeties in time, but they just weren't quite getting set in time. You know, they were getting the information, they got the play call, but they weren't in the right spots. It seems like that has cleaned up a bit, but Iowa wasn't able to do to Indiana and to really challenge the safeties the way that Illinois did. Just they didn't have quite the talent. I think that Oregon will.
Now, something that scheduling-wise, going into this season, Indiana, their non-conference slate was really looked down upon the national media. You see here in the Old Dominion game. Old Dominion now, after that win where Indiana kind of struggled offensively, was able to, outside the 2 Colton Joseph long touchdown runs, really command their offense. Old Dominion is 4-1. They decimated a Power 5 team. Yes, that was Virginia Tech, who now have moved on from their head coach, but they have kind of took care of business against Coastal Carolina and then really just dominated a Liberty team that was one of the favorites in CUSA this season and one of the top 5 favorites as a Group of 5 team. This Old Dominion, Thomas, they're an underrated squad and have a real chance to be a Group of 5 presence come the backstretch of the season.
Joe, you're right. We talked about it on the field pregame, week 1, right? Colton Joseph and that linebacker they got there, man, these guys are some dogs. And we saw it, they struck first against Indiana. Yeah. First touchdown scored in this stadium on week 1 was a Old Dominion touchdown. Guys, I think Old Dominion, especially with South Florida and North Texas playing tonight, which one of those 2 teams will lose in most likely be out of the conversation of the Group of 5 team. I think Old Dominion, especially depending on how the rest of Indiana's season goes, could really make a claim to be the team that goes in there.
Now, there's still over half the season left to be played, but it has been interesting to watch. I mean, Old Dominion right now in the power index for ESPN, they're 45th in the country, which is pretty high for a Sun Belt team. And then the other win, the Illinois game, they beat them 63-10. At the time, Illinois was ranked 9th. And again, it was kind of looked down upon that maybe Illinois was overrated. They bounced back, though, got the comeback win against USC, and then took care of business against Purdue. And Illinois, they have their toughest battle at home against Ohio State, but they've bounced back in a big way and look like they can have that path to 10 wins, Graham.
Yeah, it's looking like it. And it was a gutsy win against USC. That was a tough win. The Trojans really came to play and they responded. I think if we give the credit to Indiana of, going to Kinnick Stadium, being on the road, tough environment, not going to play our best. If we give them that credit, I think we've got to give a bit of the same to Illinois. Big point difference between those 2, I'll admit. But, this place was loud.
This place was rowdy. Yes.
Really, really loud. I'm not surprised that Illinois didn't play well. Now, to that degree, that was very surprising, but Illinois has responded well in how, a good team should. I think that there's definitely, a better argument now that they are a top 25 team than there was when they left Bloomington.
And that's kind of the old saying about Memorial Stadium, that it is a 50-point difference of, home field advantage.
Sure, yes.
You might be the first person to say that, but yes, the great old saying. There was a lot of shakeup in the Big Ten Conference this year. UCLA got their first win over the weekend. Our very own Brooks White kind of details what was a wild weekend in the Big Ten, in a weekend that both Oregon and IU did not play. Don't go anywhere.
New week, new Big Ten breakdown, and what a wild weekend it was. Penn State went out west and got stunned by previously winless UCLA 42-37. Nico Iamaleava had 5 total touchdowns, including 3 on the ground, as the Bruins snapped a 16-game skid against top 10 opponents. For Penn State, that's back-to-back losses, and the once top 10 Nittany Lions suddenly look rattled heading into homecoming. Now it's off to Champaign for the big noon kickoff this week, where number 1 Ohio State visits number 17 Illinois. The Buckeyes have been flawless so far this season. At 5-0, the number 1 team in the country has the number 1 scoring defense and total defense, and they haven't allowed a single red zone touchdown all season. Julian Sayin has been elite, completing over 80% of his passes, most in the FBS, with a 13-3 touchdown to interception ratio. Ohio State has won 9 straight games against the Illinois Fighting Illini, and we will see what they have in store this weekend. For Brett Bielema's Illini, they are quietly sitting at 5-1 and back from that butt-whooping in Bloomington a few weeks ago. A 63-10 embarrassment against Indiana, but since then, Illinois has bounced back strong, beating USC and Purdue behind Luke Altmaier, who's thrown 12 touchdowns without a pick. He has been surgical, completing nearly 74% of his passes. And the question, can that efficiency hold up against the best defense in the country? Out west, USC returns home after a heartbreaking last-second loss at Illinois and now faces number 15, Michigan. Jaden Mayava has been electric, over 48 points per game for this Trojans offense, but the key here is how he responds after the bye and the loss. Lincoln Riley's team has had 2 weeks to reset, and the Coliseum crowd should be rocking for a statement game. On the other sideline, Michigan's rolling again after a slow start to the year. The Wolverines have scored 117 points over their last 3 wins, powered by freshman quarterback Bryce Underwood and star running back Justice Haynes, who's gone over 100 yards in every single game played. Michigan's defense will be tested, but this feels like a grinded-out classic in Los Angeles. That's your Big Ten breakdown. I'm Brooks White. We'll see you next week.
It was a crazy weekend in the Big Ten. There's already been a coaching change in the Big Ten Conference with Deshaun Foster being fired from UCLA, but then, the man of the hour, offensive coordinator, the interim, Jerry Neuheisel, gets carried off the field as the Bruins get their first win against Penn State of all teams. That was, I'm kind of curious, Graham, if there's going to be some more coaching changes come the end of the season. I mean, Wisconsin's really struggling, and Penn State's on back-to-back losses.
I mean, after the success that Neuheisel had in game 1 against Penn State, I think there's a chance that it happens. I mean, the sky's the limit at this point. He brought something out of Nico Iamaleava that we haven't seen all season. So that was an impressive win. It was so fun to watch.
That was the $4 million arm that I think he was expecting going into this season. But we got a ton to talk about, an entire Oregon game to preview. Our very own Andrew Hillsman got you up to date on the Oregon Ducks and their 5-0 start.
2 weeks removed from a thrilling victory on the road at Iowa, and after a chance to get healthy on the bye week, 7th-ranked Indiana football is faced with their toughest test yet, as this Saturday they head west to face the 3rd-ranked team in the nation, the Oregon Ducks, on a 3:30 primetime matchup on CBS.
Oregon's potent offense that averages just under 47 points a game is led by sophomore signal caller Dante Moore, who's been stellar so far this season. He's gone for 242 yards per game and has thrown 14 touchdowns to just 1 interception through Oregon's 5 games, and has the ability to get it done on the ground as well, with over 130 rush yards on the year. Speaking of the ground game, junior Jaden Lamar and freshman De'Air Hill Jr. split the bulk of the carries and each have gained 200-plus yards so far this season. Perhaps the most impressive part of Dan Lanning's offense, though, are the wideouts. 4 pass catchers have eclipsed the 190-yard mark with double-digit receptions on the year, with standout freshman DeCorian Moore leading the charge with 19 catches for 297 yards and 2 touchdowns. Defensively, the Ducks sit at 3rd in the Big Ten in yards allowed per game at 238, and while Indiana fans might be familiar with Dylan Thieneman, who was the Defensive Freshman of the Year nationally at Purdue in 2023, the front 7 is the unit to watch on Saturday. Linebackers Matayo Uiagalelei and Tatum Tuioti lead the Ducks with 4 and 2.5 sacks respectively through the first 5 games, and Indiana's talented offensive line and run game should have their hands full. So, what will be the difference maker between these two top 10 teams? It has to come down to how Indiana's talented pass rush matches up against one of the best offensive lines in the nation, as Oregon has only allowed 1 sack this year and kept Dante Moore's jersey clean in their recent thriller at Penn State. We'll see what gives on Saturday at 3:30 p.m. on CBS.
The Oregon Ducks are 5-0 in the 2025 season. They're fresh off a bye week as well, just like Indiana. They're coming off their biggest win of the season in Happy Valley against Penn State, which, at the time was a huge ranked win on the road. The marquee ranked win on the road for Dan Lanning. And man, Dan Lanning Cignetti said it on Monday, one of the brightest young minds in college football. He's 39 years old, and he already has 40 wins to his name. Pretty phenomenal. He has 23 consecutive regular season wins, and this is a team that defends home like nobody's business. But man, they're coming off a big win, and Dante Moore, Thomas, looks phenomenal.
Well, you're right, Joe. Penn State was a good win until Jerry Neuheisel had his way with him. Now, before I get to Dante Moore, I want to just talk about what Cignetti said about Dan Lanning.
Yeah.
He said he's probably one of the most impressive coaching phenoms to come around for a bit. I would say, having been in this game for a little bit, he's one of the most impressive. That's high praise for a guy like Coach Kurt Cignetti. But Dante Moore, you said it, man. He has been impressive. 100 completions, 134 attempts, over 1,200 passing yards, 14 touchdowns, and a big thing for me, 1 interception. That's it.
That Penn State win, Graham, obviously Penn State kind of fell apart this past weekend, but at the time, that was the culture win for Oregon. Last season, they ran the table in the Big Ten, were undefeated, beat Penn State in the Big Ten championship, and now they're going into one of the hardest places to play. And I watched Dan Lanning in his pregame locker room speech saying there's 110,000 in the stands. None of them are playing a snap. None of them are getting a tackle. And, man, they proved the whiteout wrong, and they just looked so strong. They got up to a big lead, 17-3 in the fourth quarter. Penn State crawled back as they do. They found a way to send this game to overtime. That was a thriller. We were driving back from Iowa. You had it in the passenger seat, and when it mattered the most, though, Dante Moore came up with a huge play, and then Dylan Thieneman, what a stop.
Yeah, exactly. I think what impresses me the most about Dante Moore so far is his maturity that he plays with, for having sat last season and then not played on a great UCLA team the season before, but being behind Dylan Gabriel and being able to watch the process in 2024, learn from a NFL quarterback and just soak it all in. That's been what stood out to me, is he seems like a mature passer. He knows when to use his feet. He's very quick. He can use his feet. He can scramble, but he also gets the ball out really, really quickly. And we saw that a lot come pressure time again in that Penn State game. A lot of scenarios where the pressure was coming, he took that snap and then got it out of his hands quickly so that, things could move away from him.
Moore came into college as one of the highest rated recruits coming into the 2023 season. Went to UCLA, and Chip Kelly's final season was kind of the starter. Has split a little bit of reps with Ethan Garbers for a little bit that season, and chose to transfer to Oregon with the intent of sitting behind an experienced guy like Dylan Gabriel. We'll touch on a lot about how this Oregon coaching staff makes quarterbacks kind of a better version of themselves. But Dante Moore, obviously had a lot of stars to his name, but chose a kind of a humble approach to get to the point where he's at, Thomas.
And what a strange case in college football these days, right? But what a mature way to go about it. Think of a rookie in the NFL who could either get thrown to the wolves and start immediately and lose his confidence, lose football games, or go sit behind an Aaron Rodgers, go sit behind a Phillip Rivers, a Joe Flacco, a guy.
I'm not
saying that Dylan Gabriel
got a 90-yard touchdown once.
But guys, what I am saying is that to be able to have that maturity to say, hey, you know what? I have a lot better chance to be the best player I can be by taking a year and watching what a real pro does, learning from him, and then going out and doing it myself. It's been the formula that a lot of really good NFL teams have done to succeed, and it's what Dante Moore saw and decided, I'm going to do it, and it's proven it to be a very good decision.
What's so fascinating about this Oregon team is how well they replenish. They lost Tez Johnson. They lost Patrick Herbert, 3 of their starting offensive linemen. They're pretty much their whole defensive line outside of Mateo Uyunglele. And Graham, this receiving core, you mentioned it earlier in the show, they are so talented. One of their best receiver is a freshman. Dakarian Moore,
5-star freshman. He's unbelievable. He leads the team in receiving this season. And there was potential for this room to be even deeper with Evan Stewart, senior, on this team, but suffered a knee injury during the summer and has been out for the season. What impresses me the most is how well Dylan Gabriel, he's on the mind now, Dante Moore, how well Dante Moore uses all of the pieces. I mean, if you look at in the biggest parts of the game, Dante Moore uses 3 different receivers in 3 different high leverage situations. Gary Bryant on third down, Jeremiah McClellan in the red zone, and then DeCorian Moore during the middle 8, those being the last 4 minutes of the first half and then the first 4 of the second. Huge shout out to Taylor Lehman of Bite Size Bison, where I got all of those numbers. Go subscribe if you haven't. But that's what really sticks out to me, is that in all of those different high leverage situations, he's got a different guy that he goes to.
Absolutely. And then that game-winning touchdown against Penn State, it was Gary Bryant making the play, kind of the yards after the catch. Moore was able to move around outside the pocket. But the guy I want to talk about, Thomas, is Kenyon Sadiq, the tight end. And I know you're yearning to talk about it. He has looked phenomenal, one of the better tight ends in this Big Ten.
Yeah, well, Graham, they have all the situations where they throw to all those little receivers. How about you throw it up to the 6'3", 245-pound stud out there? And Nick Saban called him a tremendous talent on College Game Day. And he talks about how – from Nick Saban of all people, right? He talks about how he could put his 3 fingers into the dirt, block when he needed to, but also go catch a ball, go get after it on the run. Guys, I think that Kenyon Sadiq could be a high-level player, not just in college, but in the pros. I think he has a real legitimate shot to be a first-round draft pick in this year's upcoming draft.
He leads Big Ten tight ends in touchdown receptions, to back up your point. And he's played over 50% of snaps this season. Like, he's a dog.
I think what complements this passing offense, it's not a super high profile and explosive run game, but it is a versatile and very deep running back room. I mean, the leading rusher is Dyer Hill, and he averages 10 yards per carry. He hasn't even touched the ball that many times. And I know they have a guy, Jordan Davidson, has 7 touchdowns on 23 carries. I mean, how nice is that as a young quarterback and really your first year as a big-time starter? Yes, he had the UCLA job a couple years ago, but Oregon is a bit of a different ask to have that balance in the running back room.
Oh, totally. Yeah, that's a great thing for a young quarterback. That's also a great thing for offensive coordinator Will Stein. He's loving that. Got a serious quartet of running backs that he can choose from. A quartet of running backs. I sound like the music man. And it's so, he creates a lot of flexibility. He can really be creative as an offensive coordinator, use different running backs in different situations. You got a guy that averages 10 yards per carry. That's just insane. And it's going to give so much confidence to Dante Moore.
A walking first down.
Yeah, well, I want to talk about a walking touchdown. Jordan Davison. Guys, they just give him the ball at the goal line and say, yep, go score, which he has. Guys, 23 carries, 7 touchdowns. He's 6 foot, 235 pounds. And for some reason, once again, David Montgomery is going to get mentioned on this show. Just for reference for everyone, David Montgomery is 5'10", 230 pounds.
Wow.
And he's the guy that the Detroit Lions and Dan Campbell say, hey, go score a touchdown. Because this kid's a stud.
Davidson was put down there. It was a 4th and goal, or it was a 4th and 1, kind of inside the 10-yard line. Davidson was put in, ends up breaking through for a touchdown to extend the lead to 17-3. Kind of want to segue a little bit with this Oregon team with the guys up front. This is a huge offensive line. Their average weight is 324 pounds. They got a 6'8" guy there on the outside as a tackle. Thomas, these guys are some bruisers. I know we mentioned those Iowa offensive linemen because of their PFF grades, but Dan Lanning knows how to assemble an offensive line.
Yeah, speaking of another guy who will probably be a first-round pick, Isaiah World got 6'5", 321. The averages of Oregon's offensive line to Indiana's defensive line, it's a 40-pound plus difference on average. That is gigantic, but it's what Kurt Signetti has talked about, right? Can we get enough guys down in the trenches who are either big enough or fast enough to get it done? This is going to be a huge prove-it game for the defensive line that we've spoken so highly of.
There's going to be a huge test. We got a lot to compare about between the two teams. I do want to touch on this Oregon defense first. Another very talented unit that I think starts again up front, as it does in football. This isn't a team like Indiana. They don't really get to the backfield that much. They don't blitz a ton. They only have 9 sacks on the season. Uyunglele is the guy that leads the charge with 4, and their 22 tackles for loss is less than half of what Indiana has on the season. They don't have the huge explosive ability in that backfield like Indiana does defensively, but they are able to force some turnovers. And, shout out to an Indiana kid, Dylan Thieneman, making the huge play. They have some great guys there on the outside, the corners, the secondary, Graham. It is a very decorated defense that has guys pretty much at every level.
Yeah, seriously, the secondary is phenomenal. That second level is really, really good. And you mentioned the Indiana kid, but also how about Brandon Finney? He's been phenomenal in his freshman season. True freshman playing at one of the biggest cornerback positions for Oregon. He's been targeted 11 times and has allowed just 2 receptions, 18% reception rate. That's number 1 among Big Ten teams. So they've got a lot of different pieces that they have in that secondary position. What's interesting is while the D line is very built and, has that physical ability, it's like you said, not as powerful necessarily as the Indiana O-line. So there are going to be some opportunities for Indiana rushers to get something going, I think, more than people are expecting. I mean, Indiana is 3rd in line yards per rush. They're really, really good at just kind of pushing through contact, bullying their way through, and Oregon absolutely relies on their backs, their linebackers, their cornerbacks. So how will the linebackers respond, I think, is the bigger question than how strong is the defensive line, because I think Indiana's going to have a good rushing game.
I will say this is an interior line. Again, they're not putting up crazy numbers, but they just have the pound for pound size advantage. They have a rotation of 4 guys they use on the inside. 3 of them are 330 pounds at least. And then they got Bear Alexander, a really highly touted transfer, coming in as one of those backup interior guys. Thomas alongside Uyunglele, and then the guys on the interior like Tayon Gray, Amari Washington, Terrence Green, and Bear Alexander. This is a decorated unit up front for Oregon.
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge for the Indiana Hoosiers offensive line. They didn't keep Fernando Mendoza as safe or as comfortable as I think Mike Shanahan would have liked him to in the Iowa game. And now you're running against the guys you said, Uongalele, Bear Alexander. What a name, right?
That's
Bear
awesome.
Alexander.
Which one's better, Gennings Dunker or Bear Alexander?
Bear.
That is a good name. That is a good name.
You see him versus a bear in the woods, help Bear. No, but seriously,
Which
guys,
bear are you helping?
We'll figure it out later. We'll talk about that after the show. Guys, this offensive line has been very solid early in the year, struggled a little bit against the blitzing of Iowa. Now we'll see how much blitzing does Oregon need to do to make offensive line of Indiana uncomfortable.
I will say something that Oregon did very well against a very good Penn State rush attack was slow them down. Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, they were kind of null factors in that game. They kind of forced Drew Aller to take control. And yes, he led the comeback, but when it mattered the most, turned the ball over.
Yeah, that's right. It was interesting that the rushing game really wasn't there because of, how it's been the linebackers early in the season that really stopped the rush for Oregon. And obviously, like we're talking about, the defensive line has some really, really good pieces, but it just wasn't doing what other teams in the Big Ten and other teams in the top 10 have done as a group. And to your point about blitzing, Thomas, I just want to touch on quickly. Oregon really hasn't brought out a full-blown blitz yet. They haven't brought the house at anybody, which is interesting. Iowa blitzed more in the Week 5 matchup against Indiana than Oregon has all season long.
Wow.
So that's something big to note because the blitz was really what got to Fernando Mendoza. I feel like kind of what threw him off his balance. And Oregon, not a team that does that a lot. They don't really bring that rush.
And Illinois didn't really all that much either. And the high touting of Illinois' defensive line coming into that game was a big deal. The Indiana offensive line held up very, very well in that game. So is the concern how good Oregon's D-line is, or can Indiana not play against the blitz well? That's going to be a question coming into Saturday.
Let's check out some matchups. And I think the first one that we have to start with is the quarterbacks. Right. 2 of probably the best in the Big Ten, 2 of the best in the entire country. Fernando Mendoza for the Hoosiers, Dante Moore for the Ducks. I mean, look at the numbers right there. That is phenomenal through 5 games. These guys look terrific. They both have Pac-12 in their blood. Fernando Mendoza coming from Cal, and then Dante Moore was at UCLA when they were still a former Pac-12 team. Rest in peace, but they are coming back. Good for the Pac-12. But these 2 have played each other back in 2023. UCLA versus Cal. It was the season finale. Cal won 33-7. That was a lifetime ago, it feels like. I mean, very different situations for these 2 quarterbacks now.
Oh, boy, I bet Dante Moore wants some revenge, too, don't you think? Man, how about the Conference of Champions? But, yeah, it's been a great start for both of these quarterbacks, obviously, both in the running right now for the Heisman. And they've had pretty similar starts in terms of pressure. They've been pressured about the same amount of times. What's impressed me about Dante Moore is he's only been sacked once. I think we mentioned that a little bit earlier. His ability to evade pressure, get his way out of it, whether that be with his legs or with just getting that ball out of the pocket, it's very, very impressive.
He has the ability to run and showed it a little bit against Penn State, some of the design plays he had on some of the third and fourth short opportunities. But his ability to escape and extend plays to move it down the field is looked terrific so far. But that matchup right there, I know they don't play on the field at the same time, but so many eyes are looking on them, both for scouting reasons, for Heisman reasons, and that is going to be a fun battle to watch, Thomas.
Yeah, major implications. I'll talk about that. Potentially, who's going to be the first pick in the NFL draft? Potentially, who's going to win the Heisman? Potentially, who could be the Big Ten Player of the Year? There are so many implications, and obviously, it's not just these two playing the game. There's the supporting cast. There's the offensive line. There's so much more that goes into it. But guys, for the implications of not just the quarterback battle, but for college football itself, this game should be on every TV in the nation.
We will absolutely touch on that. Oregon plays in one of the loudest and toughest environments in all the nation. Autzen Stadium in Eugene is rocking. Every Saturday they have a home game. Our very own Grace Jeffer talks a little bit about Autzen Stadium.
The Indiana Hoosiers are going to Eugene, Oregon to take on the Ducks. They're going to play at Autzen Stadium, which is notorious for being a tough place to play, especially for the opponent. What makes Autzen Stadium in Eugene so challenging for visitors? While it only seats around 54,000 fans, smaller than many other major college football stadiums, its design stands apart from others, which benefits the Ducks. Autzen's amphitheater design, with its steep stands, sunken field, and seating close to the field, effectively traps the sound. These features amplify the noise, which some say feels like it's directly overhead, deafening for fans and players alike. Even with the incredible environment at Autzen Stadium, in 2004, number 24 Oregon fell at home to Indiana 30-24 in Eugene. With 18 consecutive wins at Autzen Stadium, Oregon currently holds the longest active home win streak in the nation. Under Coach Dan Lanning, the Ducks are 22-1 at home. Oregon's last loss in Eugene was on November 12, 2022, as they fell to the Washington Huskies 37-34. The following week, they began the 15-game home win streak against top 10 Utah. Both top 10 teams will be looking for statement wins. The Hoosiers to prove they can compete no matter the circumstances, and the Ducks to extend their win streak and show dominance. With both teams ranking in the top 10 of total offense, it should be an intense, high-scoring game. Last season, Indiana's only losses came at Ohio State and Notre Dame. The Hoosiers and the Fighting Irish faced each other in the first round of the college football playoff, amplifying the volume even more. Both Ohio Stadium and Notre Dame Stadium are notoriously loud, forcing Indiana to battle not only the opponent but also the crowd. In Week 5, Indiana visited Iowa's tough Kinnick Stadium, where the Hawkeyes were 14-2 at home since 2023. Iowa has pulled off upsets against ranked opponents at Kinnick, such as their 14-13 win against number 3 Michigan in 2016. More recently, Iowa nearly upset number 22 Iowa State, falling 16-13. This season, facing a thunderous Kinnick Stadium, Indiana capitalized to remain undefeated, winning 20-15. Indiana has proved to be a force. Can Curt Cignetti's Hoosiers stay composed at Autzen Stadium? Not only will this game be exciting considering both teams are undefeated, but ESPN's College Game Day will also be on site in Eugene. For IUS TV Sports, I'm Grace Jeffer.
Thank you to our very own Grace Jeffer. This is the fourth ever meeting between IU and Oregon. The first ever as Big Ten opponents. The last was in 2004 in September as Oregon's season opener out in Autzen Stadium. This is the last time that a Big Ten team beat Oregon at their home facility. Kind of crazy. Ben Jarvis Green Ellis, a longtime NFL running back, was the leading rusher for the Hoosiers. Indiana won. Yeah. That is crazy. Indiana won 30-24 in Eugene. Again, this is the last time a Big Ten team has beat Oregon in Autzen. Indiana on the season, they were led by Gary DiNardo, finished the year 3-8. Oregon entered the season ranked. That's one ranked win for Indiana. Indiana later that season took on a ranked Minnesota team, 2 of their 3 wins on a 3-8 year were against ranked teams, fellas. I was not a year old yet when this game happened. Graham might have been like 8, 6,
I was
7
gonna say,
or
Graham,
something
were you
like
at
that.
this game?
I'm not sure.
This was my 21st birthday.
Oh,
Happy
good.
birthday.
Oh.
I know our executive producer was he fresh out of college? Yeah. Fresh out of college for Galen Clavio. So that's a lifetime ago. A lot has changed since I wasn't even 1 yet. But this
Great at the end of the show.
I'm apparently going to lower my letter grade is what's happening for this show. This is one of the best coaching matchups in the country. 2 coaches that are 25-year age gap that are both in their 4th season coaching FBS football. Kurt Signetti, Dan Lanning, the stars align. Dan Lanning has done such a good job, and Kurt Signetti has done something that no head coach has ever done, Graham.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be fireworks between these two, right? One of the best offensive minds in the game right now, and Dan Lanning, and then Kurt Signetti just being one of the biggest names in coaching in college football. It's been so fun watching both of them and how they've built these programs, because Oregon always had the history, but they were looking for that next guy, that next step to take it a bit further. And man, they found it.
And quickly, just on Lanning, he had a great comment, I think, about Kurt Signetti earlier this week about the coaches that have stayed with Kurt Signetti from JMU all the way to now here at Indiana. And the point that he made was, well, those guys are staying because of how good of a coach and how good of a leader Kurt Signetti is.
Absolutely, but also coordinators. I mean, the offensive coordinator for Oregon, Will Stein, is kind of a hero, has brought quarterbacks into a new form of themselves, was hired in 23, had Bo Nix looking like one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Yes, he is an NFL player now, but was 3rd in Heisman voting, brought in Dylan Gabriel from the transfer portal, who was phenomenal and also in the Heisman caliber conversation, and then Dante Moore, top of the boards right now in Heisman conversation. This is a Dan Lanning-led team. I think it runs from their offensive coordinator, though, and Will Stein. And then for Signetti, this game is so huge. This game is huge for both teams. Indiana is 0-46 on the road against an AP top 10 opponent. Yes, that is the Indiana football history lesson for you. Kurt Signetti is 0-2 in said games. Notre Dame and Ohio State are the sample size. Everything kind of matters implications-wise, the way this season shapes up with this Oregon-IU game, Graham.
Yeah, I agree, especially now that, Jerry Neuheisel did what he did to Penn State. We keep coming back to that.
Jerry.
But that game now has a lot of different implications. Penn State, right? So this game is it, right? Yeah. This is totally it. And how close do they get? Does Indiana get? Does Indiana win? Does Indiana, lose a close game? All of those outcomes have a different future, lead a different path for the rest of the season.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's gigantic. There are 4 scenarios, right, in a football game. A blowout, a close win, a blowout win, a close win, a blowout loss, and a close loss for the Hoosiers. What does each one look like? Some massively raise their chances of making the playoffs. I don't think any necessarily destroy their chances of making the playoffs. Now, the Penn State game, it's not as quality of a game where if you win, it's like, yep, you're in. I think Indiana needs to be competitive in this game.
There is so much noise. A 3:30 kickoff on CBS. College game days in attendance. The 13th time that Oregon has ever hosted College game day. They have a perfect record when it is there. And then when Indiana is the visiting team, you see it right there, 0-3. Before we head out, though, Sabrina Ionescu is going to be the guest picker as well. Her second time doing it in Eugene. We got some score predictions, the thing we always get so right and we're so good at. Thomas, let's kick it off before we kick off.
No, let Graham go.
All right, Graham goes first.
Because he's so good at it. Yeah, let him go.
I go first because I'm always the closest. That's why we do it this way. I'm gonna say 27-20 Oregon. I think it comes down to Autzen Stadium for me. We've talked about how Indiana does have more of a chance against this D line and O line than maybe some people are thinking, but I still think that Autzen is going to be a touchdown difference.
I think Indiana is a very good team. I think they stack up very well against Oregon. I think this crowd is going to be rowdy, and I think the weather's going to play a factor. It's a high chance of rain. The high is 60. It's going to be cold, rainy October, kind of Big Ten weather at its finest, even though it's out in the Pacific Northwest. I got Oregon 24-20, Thomas.
Guys, last year, I think when Indiana had the historical season, they went to Ohio State. Everyone thought, well, this would be cool. How cool it would be if Indiana won that game. But I don't think anyone actually saw Indiana as like they have a chance to win that game. I think this is a different team. I think it's a different season. I think Indiana actually does have a chance to go win this game. Mike Shanahan has to open up the playbook. They have to have quick throws to get the offensive line freedom to just not get Mendoza attacked. And then the receivers have to have big games. And then the biggest thing, controlling time of possession. Can they cause a turnover or two, or a big play on special teams to where they get a couple extra possessions, a little bit of extra time? I think the Hoosiers win 23-20.
Wow. All right. The first time that we've been different on our picks this season. A huge matchup. Number 7, Indiana, traveling to number 3, Oregon. CBS has the call 3:30 Eastern time, 12:30 local time. College game day starting at 6 a.m. local time out in Eugene. Graham and I are going to be there, possibly bringing our earplugs for the 120 decibel level volume we'll be hearing at Autzen Stadium. But for Thomas Crow, Graham Nash, our entire production crew, I'm Joe Cronin saying so long from Merchants Bank Field here at Memorial Stadium. And we'll catch you next time on Crimson Kickoff.
Cooper got open and caught it. Touchdown, Indiana.
Going up the middle is Omar Cooper, and he'll walk into the end zone.
Complete at the 47. Surratt with no one to beat.